Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome to the Satin Halloween cookie class. I'm so excited you guys are here to join me. We can go over to the overhead camera and I'll show you guys what we're making. We'll wait till, okay, there we go. So I have a cute little trio here. We have a spider cookie, a bat cookie, and a cat with a little witch hat. These are really cute and really easy to do, so I'm excited for this class. Okay, so to go over some of the supplies we'll be using, I have some water and a food safe paintbrush. This is to help us adhere the fondant to the cookie and to adhere fondant to each other. I also have cornstarch. This is used to help the fondant, reduce the fondant from sticking to your hands or your work surface. And then I have the cutters we're going to be using. We have a 3-inch circle cutter. This is going to be the size of the cookie, or this cutter is going to be the size of the cookie or whatever surface you're going to be decorating. We can go over that more later. I also have a star cutter. I think this is about 3 inches or 2 3/4 inches. And then I have a 1-inch square cutter. I also have dry towels here because I'm going to be wiping my hands quite frequently. I also have wet towels as well. And then I also have Ziploc bags. So this is going to be used for when we open up our fondant packs and we need to keep them sealed so that they don't dry out. So the fondant colors we have are orange, bright green, black, purple, and white. I also have a little rolling pin here, pair of scissors to open up our fondant packs. And then I also have 3 cookies. And I'm using store-bought sugar cookies. You can use whatever cookies you want. You can even cut out circles out of Rice Krispie treats, cake, or brownies, whatever you like. This is really has a wide variety of uses for these toppers. These could also be cupcake toppers as well. Okay, so first we're going to start with our orange fondant and we're going to cover all 3 of our cookies because that's the base of our cookies is orange. So I'm going to put the rest of the colors to the side for now. I'll need my scissors, my rolling pin, and my circle cutter. And put my towels to the side. All right, so first I'm going to open up the pack. If you're new to using fondant, you'll notice that to start, it's soft, but it's not really soft. The more you knead it, you'll see that it gets softer. So it's kind of firm, but not too firm to the touch. So we're going to take out a portion. Actually, let's just take out all of your orange. We'll knead all of this up. And if you have hotter hands, you'll notice that your fondant will get softer faster. And that's where the cornstarch comes into play as well. So I'm definitely going to need cornstarch because my hands are on the warmer side. If a little too much cornstarch ends up coming out, that's okay. Just scoot it to the side because it's important not to use too much because this can end up drying out the fondant if you knead too much into it. So what I'm doing is I'm pressing down with the palm of my hand and I'm folding it over and pressing down again. And I'm just repeating this process until the fondant starts to get warm and the gums get activated. So by us kneading, this is going to make the fondant softer and pliable so we can easily roll it out and manipulate it into shapes. So I'm just going to knead it, fold it, keep kneading it. My fondant's already starting to get very soft because my hands are on the warmer side. All right, so mine's just about ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of form it into a ball and I'm going to make it like a smooth surface for me to start rolling out. So I have a ball here and I'm just going to slightly push down just to try to get any air bubbles out. And I'm going to take my rolling pin. Also make sure your surface is dusted with some cornstarch so that the fondant doesn't stick. I'm also working on a silicone mat, so this really helps as well. So I have my surface dusted with cornstarch. You can also put a little bit on top of your fondant as well. And we're just gonna roll back and forth. And then I like to flip my fondant and roll it back and forth again. This kind of helps create, keep a round shape. And we're going to roll it out so that it's about between 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch thick. I usually like to do 1/8 of an inch thick. So I think I'm probably around there now. So now what we're going to do is cut 3 circles out because this is going to be the base of our cookies. So what I do is I choose where I'm going to cut down, place the cookie cutter down, and I press down. And then to ensure that I get a really clean cut, I start twisting the cutter just a little bit to loosen it and to make sure it really cuts through. And that makes sure that you have nice clean edges. If you notice that your cutter isn't too sharp and your edges aren't looking that clean, you can take your finger and just gently rub it along the edges, and that's going to help clean up the edges of your fondant. So I'm going to just put this one to the side, and I'm going to cut out 2 more.
While we're cutting out those couple, could I sneak in a few questions if that's all right?
For sure.
Awesome. So they're about the cornstarch. So somebody asked, what do you do if you have added too much cornstarch by accident? And then someone also asked about using powdered sugar instead of cornstarch, if that is an option.
Okay, so you can definitely use powdered sugar. Some people use a mixture. Some people just use cornstarch. Some people just use powdered sugar. So if you have powdered sugar, that's great too. Again, you want to be careful with how much you add of that as well. If you add too much cornstarch, just try to brush it off of the fondant and not completely knead it all in. Just like I did before, I went to pour my cornstarch out and a bunch fell on. So I brushed a lot of it to the side and I'll just use it later. So if a lot does happen to come out, just try to brush it off and try not to knead it all into the fondant because that will definitely start to dry it out. So what I did here is I have my extra orange fondant that we didn't use, and this is not going to go to waste. I put it in my Ziploc bag so it's nice and airtight. And I made sure all the air is out of it and that it's sealed very tight. And then if I wanted this to last longer, I can put this also into a Tupperware or an enclosed container as well. And I'm probably going to use this again, so I'm just going to stick it to the side in the bag. So we have our 3 circles, and now we're going to adhere this to our cookies. And so this fondant is kind of acts as like a frosting that you're able to roll out and create different shapes with. So it's really cool. So you covering your whole cookie, it's going to taste amazing. It's going to have a nice vanilla flavor, just like if you were to put icing on your cookie. So what I'm going to do is I'm just using a small amount of water. Now, the important thing is that when you're using water with your fondant to adhere it, you don't want to use a ton of water because that's going to make the fondant sticky, because naturally when water is with sugar, it makes it a little tacky. So you want to just put just enough so that you know it's going to stick to the surface you're putting it on. So here you can see that I didn't put too much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place it directly on the cookie, and I'm going to slightly press down, not too hard, just enough to really make it stick. I don't want to put my fingerprints onto it too much. Again, you can also wear gloves as well. That can help with the fingerprints or even the warmth of your hands. It can act as a barrier. So I'm just going to continue to put the circles onto my cookies.
Awesome. Can I sneak in with another couple quick questions? Got a lot of engaged viewers today.
Go for it.
Oh, sweet. Absolutely. Somebody asked how thick you want the fondant to be when you put it on.
Okay, so depending on what you are putting your fondant on, so if you were covering a cake, you would probably want it around 1/8 of an inch thick. That's about what I did the thickness for my cookies as well. If you were doing a topper and you were just sitting it on top of frosting, you could go a little thicker. You could do about 1/4 of an inch thick. This right here is about 1/8 of an inch thick. Again, I don't measure, I'm just eyeballing it. And later on, like when we get to the witch's hat on the cat, you can see here the witch's hat is definitely thicker. So that's probably more about 1/4 of an inch thick. So for these cookies, you want about 1/8 of an inch thick.
All right, excellent. And we did have some people asking, with fondant, taste is very divisive. So we had some people asking about the taste and if there's anything that can be done to make it taste better.
Okay, so Satin Ice fondant comes in a few different flavors. We have all the colors are vanilla. And then we do have a brown, which is chocolate. It tastes absolutely amazing. I love the vanilla. To me, I think it tastes just like an icing or a buttercream. I know some people don't like the taste of fondant, but if you weren't super fond of the taste, you could make the layer a little bit thinner, but other than that, I mean, you could probably knead other flavors into it. I know people make powdered flavors or stuff like that. But again, if you start to knead and put things into fondant, it could really mess with the consistency and the workability of the product. But I believe as it is right now, it's absolutely delicious. So, but everyone has their opinions with fondant too.
Yeah, they sure do. It's very, very divisive. One last question. When storing the remaining fondant, as you mentioned, either be it in the Tupperware or in the bag, is it best to store it in the refrigerator or the pantry?
No, definitely keep it in the pantry. Also, so our fondant actually also comes in these tubs. You'll probably see them at Michael's like this as well as the 4.4 ounce packs. And our fondant is always stored in these, which would also have a bag inside as well. So, and this stays for 12 months shelf life. So as long as you keep your fondant sealed in an airtight container at room temperature, you should be good for a pretty long time. Okay, so now let's start decorating one of our cookies. I think we'll start with the spider first, which is this one. So we're going to need to take out our black. So I'm going to put this here. This way you guys can see that. And I'll put my other two cookies to the side. So we'll have to start taking out our black fondant. So again, I'm going to take my scissors out and just cut off the top. We aren't going to need a ton of the black fondant. Just about this much, probably like a quarter of the stick of fondant. And then we're going to knead it just like we did with the orange fondant. And this time, since I don't have too much, I'm not going to use my palm to press down just because it's a smaller amount of fondant. So I'm just going to knead it with my hands. And it's already starting to get a little bit soft. So I have some extra cornstarch over here, and I'm just going to dust a little bit on my hands and on my fingers to help reduce the sticking. Oh, I forgot to mention that there's also a link in the chat that contains the tutorial, which is on Satin Ice site, just to use as pictures to go along if you have any questions along the way. And it will also be available after the class as well. So that's in the chat box, just so you guys know. So for the spider cookie, we are going to start. I'm probably not going to use all of this black right now because we will need some for the legs. So I'm just going to use a small amount of black fondant. If you're using more than me, that's totally fine. Everyone's is going to be a little bit unique. So I rolled mine in a ball. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pointer finger, and I actually am just putting a little bit of cornstarch on it so that it doesn't stick to the fondant. And I'm going to lightly press down on this ball into a circular formation to make sure I get all around the edges. And this is going to form a thick circle. So I like to do it this way in case people don't have all the different circle cutters and different sizes. So I'm just lightly pressing down until I have a circle that forms. And this is going to be the body of the spider. So I'll show you, I'll pick it up to show you about the thickness that this is. It's not thin at all. I just lightly press down on that ball to create a circle. So here's the thickness. Okay, so now we're going to attach this to the middle of our cookie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very small amount of water, lightly brush some on the back of this circle. And then I'm going to adhere it right to the center of the orange cookie. So it should look like this right now. And then we'll move on to the legs. So for the legs, we're gonna make 8 really small balls of black fondant. I'll show you about the size, probably the size of like a pea. I don't know if this is a good reference for size. So we're gonna make 8 of these. So I'm just using my leftover fondant over here. And because I'm constantly using this fondant, I'm not putting it in a bag because I'm constantly using it right now. It's in my hand. If it was just sitting on the side, not being used for a long time, I would put it in a Ziploc bag like I did with the orange. So I'm just rolling out small balls of the black fondant. These are going to then be rolled out to be the spider legs. They don't have to be perfect round circles either because we're going to form these into really skinny logs. Okay, and if you end up making your balls of fondant too big, that's okay because we're going to roll these out, and then if you need to, you can roll it out even more to make it skinnier. So now that I'm done using my black fondant for now, I'm going to put it in a Ziploc bag. I'm going to make sure all the air is out. Okay, so now we're going to form all of these little balls into the spider legs. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of cornstarch on my pointer finger, and I'm going to lightly start rolling this back and forth until you start to form a log. So you'll see this form pretty quickly. And we want them a little skinnier. So I'm just going to keep rolling. So it's about that size. And then I'll use this as my reference for all of my other ones. It's important not to press down too hard when you're doing this. You're just lightly having pressure on it and you're just moving back and forth so that it forms a nice skinny log. And I like to go like along the whole way. I switch sides, I go on the left, I go on the right, just to make sure everything's even. See this one, this ball of fondant was probably bigger than the last one I used. So I'm going to actually have to probably roll this out a little longer than the other one just to get it to the right thickness that I need. So even though that's longer than the other, that's okay because the thickness is around the same. That's the most important part because we can always cut off the excess. So I'm just continuing to roll these out to create the spider legs. Okay, are there any more questions so far?
We did have one about the kind of cookies you can use with fondant. It doesn't matter. Is there any kind of cookie that just doesn't work well with fondant?
I don't think there's really any kind of cookie that doesn't work well with fondant. You just want to make sure that the surface is smooth. So that's why a lot of people like to use sugar cookies just because they are a sturdier cookie and they usually bake pretty flat. Whereas like if you're using a chocolate chip cookie, you know, you could have like the little bumps from the chocolate chips and they don't usually bake as flat.
Yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, you know, to each their own. You can make it work however you would like to make it work, basically.
Definitely.
And then also we did have a question. For Mary Jo here, her local Michael's store didn't have any of the colors that you're using today, but she does have some other colors along with white. So could she dye the white with the same gel colors that she uses for tinting buttercream? Would that work out okay for her?
Yes, you can. So when you color fondant, you definitely want to use gel color because that's more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more it's the best pigmented color, food color, and it's not going to really change the consistency too much because gel is a thicker consistency. So that's definitely good. And even if you have other colors, feel free to make these like a spider purple if you want, or whatever colors you have. It's fun to do other colors. It doesn't have to be black. Okay, so I have all of the balls of fondant rolled out to be very thin logs for the legs. As you can see, all the lengths are a little bit different, but the thickness is about the same. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to make them all about the same length. So I'm just going to take the excess off of the ones that seem to be a little longer and match them up with the length of the first one that I did. And again, at the end, we might have to make them even shorter depending on how much room we have on our cookie for the legs. You can use a knife for this part if you do have one, or you can just pull it off with your finger, whatever works best for you. Okay, so now these are all about the same length. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the legs and we're going to just slightly bend it so it has a point. So it kind of looks like an upside down V. So we're going to do this with each one. And it's important when you're doing this part, it's important that you're moving kind of quickly with your fondant, because once fondant's exposed to air, it's already starting to dry. So if these were sitting out for too long before you started this bending process, they would start to get dry and they wouldn't be as smooth when you're bending them. They could easily crack. And you also want to be very careful when you're working with smaller pieces of fondant because it can be a little fragile. So I'm just taking each one of these and I'm just gently bending it a little bit and then using my fingers to manipulate it to have a point at the top. So these look like upside down V's. And we're going to be putting 4 on each side of the spider. And again, we might actually have to make these shorter depending on how much room we have on our cookie, depending on how big of the body we did for the spider. So I have all of mine bent. So now what we could do is we can play with what we have here and see if the length is going to work. So these are my scraps. Put over here. I can tell some of these are going to be long. So what I'm going to do is, the beauty of fondant is that it's very, you can easily manipulate it. So if you messed up with something, you can always fix it along the way, as long as it's still pliable. So I don't think I have my, oh, I do, I have an X-Acto knife. Okay. You can use a small knife or an X-Acto knife for this. I actually have to make mine shorter so that they fit on my cookie. And again, I know someone asked if you can use different cookies, but you can also use Rice Krispie treats for this. You can use brownies, whatever you really want for the base of your dessert. Okay, so I'm definitely making my legs shorter. I made mine too long for my cookie. If you're using water to attach these to the body, you want to use the tiniest amount. You might want to dab the paintbrush on a dry towel before dabbing the water, just because if it's too much, the colors will start to bleed. So right now, my fondant's actually pretty warm and it's sticking to the body itself. So I'm not adding any water yet. I might later if I notice it's falling off. So I'm just adding 4 legs to each side of the spider. And I'm keeping mine how they're bent, but I'm just making them shorter so that they fit on my cookie.
Awesome. Vivian actually had a question about the spider toppers.
Okay.
She asked, could you make the toppers a few days in advance with the completed spiders and then drop them onto the cookie fully assembled? If you could do that, how long would the toppers keep, or would they start to dry and crack quickly?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you made fondant toppers in advance, you can definitely do that. I do that a lot with cupcakes because it could be a lot of work if you do it all in one day because you also want them to set and dry. But say you made these a day in advance. I like to let them set out and dry just a little bit so they're easier to handle. For example, for this one, you could make the spider body ahead and the face, but then I would wait for putting the legs on until when you're ready to adhere it to the cookie, just because these are very delicate. But the bigger pieces you can definitely make in advance. And then you can use like an edible glue because this part of the body will be drier, so it won't really want to stick as nicely. But edible glue or royal icing sometimes helps as well for people to stick the fondant to each other. So I'm going to have to start using a little bit of water on mine, but what I'm going to do is take my brush and I'm going to dab the water off onto a paper towel to really get the excess off. And I'm just going to lightly brush the side of my spider where I want the legs to adhere. Just enough so that it sticks. And it's fun if the legs are a little like, if they're not even on both sides and they're a little crooked, it makes it more fun, especially for Halloween. Okay, so I have 3 more legs to put on. I'm just gonna cut down the rest of these. Make sure they fit. Okay. Again, I'm using a very small amount of water. It's important not to use too much water because that can make the colors bleed. And then that will just be a little bit messy. Okay, so I have all of my spider legs on now. I just might have to add a little bit more water to some of the pieces so that they really stick. Okay, so next we're gonna work on the eyes. So the way I did the eyes, one side is a little larger than the other and I wanted to give them a little googly eye look. So we're going to work with white, bright green, and black. So we already have our black out and we're just going to have to open our white and our green. With us working between all the like darker colors and lighter colors, you're definitely going to either want to wash your hands if you have access to a sink and water. I don't at the moment, so I'm going to use wet towels to really make sure my hands are clean to get any of the black pigment off of my hands. And then always make sure your hands are nice and dry as well. And you might want to clean up your work surface a little bit so that the other colors don't pick up any other residue that's on your work surface, and then dry it as well. Okay, so now I'm taking out my white and my bright green for the eyes. You'll notice between these, we're using a lot of the same techniques with creating like little balls of fondant and then pressing them to make circles. So first, we're only going to need a very small amount of bright green. So I'm just taking out like 2 small balls worth of it. And then I'm going to put it in a plastic bag. And I'm going to do the same with the black. So I'm going to take out 2 small balls of black. Doesn't matter what size they are right now. And I'm going to put the green fondant in with the black. And then do the same with the white. 2 small balls of the white fondant. Okay, so now what we're going to do is layer these colors to create these eyes. So the first layer is white, and then so you see like a nice little white rim, and then you do a bright green, black, and then white again. So first we're going to start with the white. And what I like to do is just press this directly onto the fondant. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Again, I'm probably using fondant the size of a pea for reference. And then, so I'm going to just like place that right there. And then the other one is going to be smaller than that. So for size reference, let's see. See, this one on the right is a little bit smaller than the one on the left. That's what I want. If you want them to be the same size, you can, but I think it's fun if one's a little bit smaller than the other. So what I'm going to do is I have the 2 balls of white fondant on my spider body. And I have it in the center and they're a little spread out because what I'm going to do is lightly press down with my pointer finger. And then this is going to turn it into a circle. And if you happen to have all of those very small circle cutters in the different sizes, that can definitely be used for this too. But I know a lot of people probably don't. So I like to use this technique to create really any size circle that I need. So I'm just lightly pressing around to create a circle shape for the eye. You can do this off of the fondant too, but I just think it helps it stick. So I'm just lightly pressing it around to spread it a little bit. Okay, so one circle is done and now I'm going to work on the other one. And this one, it's okay if they start to touch, but I'm just going to make this, I'm going to spread this out to be a circle as well, but it's going to be a smaller circle than the one on the left side. All right, so I have 2 circles now. And then the next, what we're going to do is the bright green. So we're kind of, as we go onto our layers, the sizes of the fondant balls are going to get smaller. And again, you're always going to be working with a slightly larger size on the left because the white circle is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to try to like eyeball how much I'm going to need of the green. I'm going to put it there in the middle, and then I'm going to use an even smaller amount on the other one. And this circle is going to be just slightly smaller than the white one. So you still see the rim of the white, but you mainly see the green. So what I'm going to do is, again, I have my 2 small circles of bright green fondant, and now I'm going to use my pointer finger and just slightly press down until it forms a circle. You don't want to press too hard because then that could just really mess up the shape, and you don't want to mess up the shape of the white underneath as well. You could do this separately and then layer them after. I like to do it on top of one another so that it sticks easier. And then once fondant is small and thin, it's hard to pick up and transfer. So I like to just do it right on top. Okay, so this one's about done. And now I'm going to go over to this really small bright green one on the right and start flattening that one out to create a circle. And with these cookies, it's like the eye shapes could be whatever you want. They could be really fun since this is for Halloween. So have fun with it. It doesn't have to be perfect, and everyone's is going to turn out different. That's what's fun about fondant too. You can really get creative. Okay, so now it's time for the black fondant. So again, I'm going to make a ball of black fondant even smaller than the green. So again, I'm eyeballing this, and I'm going to put a really small ball of black fondant on top of the bright green, and I'm going to do an even smaller one on the right side. And then I'm going to take my pointer finger and I'm just going to start pressing down again to form a circle. So you have this nice layer of white, bright green, and then black for the eyes. And I'm going to do the same on the right. Just have to add a little bit more to this one. And what's nice of doing it this way, it's like the fondant kind of layers into itself because it's warm. So it looks really cool. It doesn't really look like it's layered. It looks like it's one piece for all these colors. So now I like to add like the little white pupils because it makes it really cute and looks like googly eyes. So for that, I want to make sure that my hands are nice and clean for that. So I'm just going to use my wipe to get off any color. My hands and make sure they're dry. And then I'm going to use really small little specks of white fondant, and I'm going to place it on the left upper corner of the black circles. And again, I'm going to use the same technique where it's a small little ball or speck in this case, and I'm going to lightly press down to form a really small circle and to attach it. And then our spider is done. Really cute, especially like a whole platter of these. They would be really cute. And then you could also make these cupcake toppers as well, and then place them on a buttercream cupcake if you wanted to. Okay, so next let's move on to the bat cookie. So the bat cookie, let me just take up my scraps. I'm gonna just clean my surface a little bit. Before I move on, were there any questions on the spider cookie?
Yeah, a couple of quick ones. Since the spider cookie was using black fondant and we're about to use the bat, which also has black fondant,
Yep.
Tabitha mentioned that her spider was looking a little bit powdery. How would you go about fixing it to make it so it doesn't look a little powdery?
Okay, so because you are using cornstarch on darker colors, what you can do is you can just take your finger and just like lightly brush it off. Or sometimes what you could do is take your paintbrush, make sure it's pretty much on the dry side, and you can just lightly go over it, and that can speck off any of the powdered sugar or powdered cornstarch.
Yes. Yep. That's a great tip. And speaking of great tips, Vivian came up with one that might be really good for if you're making these cookies in mass, which is that it looks like you could use the tip of a medium or small pastry tube / tip to cut out some eye circles to save a bunch of time if you have to do multiple.
Yes, that's another really good hack for these eyes. If you have to have small circles, because I know it's hard to find those small circle cutters. So whatever hack you can get, I definitely have used that idea too with the piping tips. That's a really good one. Okay, so now we're going to do the bat. This is what this one looks like. And again, we're going to be using a lot of the same techniques for this. So we're going to take a small portion of Black Out. And we're going to knead it again until it's nice, soft, and pliable. And whatever extra black I'm not using, I'm going to put away. Okay. So once my black fondant is pliable, what I'm going to do is, again, probably not going to use all of this right now because I'm going to need some for the wings. So I'm going to use, and take some of that off. I'm going to roll this into a ball, just like that. And again, I'm going to start pressing down to form a circle using the cornstarch. Look, you'll start to see the powder on this piece of fondant. First, I need to put some more on my surface so this doesn't stick, but see how you see the powder on that? The more you rub over with your finger, it starts to disappear. So that's a good way to clean it up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep pressing down until this forms a circle lightly with my pointer finger. And I'm just rubbing off the excess cornstarch now. And then what I'm going to do is I kind of want to make this a shape where it's almost like an oval or like an egg shape so that the top is a little bit tapered, but it still has a rounded edge. It's not going to be pointy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my pointer fingers to lightly start just tapering in the top. So it creates that little bit of a tapered shape. You can pick it up, use your fingers to smooth the sides. Just so it's about that shape. So it's not really a circle, it's kind of almost like a triangle with a rounded top. It's not pointy. Okay, so that's going to be the bat's body. So I'm going to put that to the side for now. And then next I'm going to show you how to make the wings. So again, we're going to use the same exact technique. I'm going to roll this black fondant into a ball, about the same size ball that we did before. Just need to put some cornstarch on it. Again, a lot of cornstarch just came out, so I'm swiping it to the side because I definitely don't need that much. Okay, so I have my ball of black fondant, and again, I'm going to press down with my pointer finger to create a circle. And then what we're going to do with this circle is cut it in half, and then these are going to be our wings. So to help kind of make an even circle, what I'm doing is when I'm pressing down with my pointer finger lightly, I'm also moving in a circular formation. So this way it gets around the whole surface area of the fondant to make it a circle. Or you could just tap around. Okay, so I have my circle here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half. So I have 2 half circles right down the middle. These are going to be our wings. And then again, we're going to manipulate this fondant again, and we're going to kind of bend it a little bit. And then what we're going to do is point the tops. So I'm taking my pointer finger, my 2 pointer fingers, and I'm just pressing the top to make it like a point. I'm going to do the same with the other one. So I'm just pressing the top, kind of molding it to look like, so it has a point at the top. See how these are? And then this is how we're going to attach it. So this is what it looks like. And then it's going to go on like that to the bat body. Again, you want to make sure that this lines up with your body. So again, this might be too big. We might have to fix the size a little bit with our knife. So let's see. So what you could do is in this process before we put it on the cookie, so you have your bat body here, and then you have your wings. You can see how they line up. Mine are a little big for my body. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the edges, but still make sure that they're a little bit pointy. I'm going to cut the other edges a little bit. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our knife and cut like little rigid edges along the straight edge of the wing. They don't have to be perfect. It's just to give it a little texture. So we're making the wings have little pointy cuts at the bottom. I'll put this up closer so you can see it right after I'm done cutting. So you're just going to use your knife to make pointy cuts at the bottom of the straight edge. So we're going to do the same with the other side. Okay, so I have both of my wings ready. And it looks like it pretty much is consistent with the size of the bat's body. So I'm going to attach this to the cookie now. So I'm going to lightly brush some water on the back of the bat. Place it in the center of the cookie. Then I'm going to attach the wings as well. And we're going to make sure the wings are pushed up against the side of the bat's body. Okay, so right now we have the bat's body and the wings. And it's okay if they start to come off the cookie a little bit. I think that's fun. If you don't have room for them to come off the cookie, you can always make them smaller, or even make the bat's body a little smaller so you can fit the wings all the way onto the cookie. So next we're going to make the ears for the bat. So what we're going to do for that is take 2 small balls of black fondant, again, about the size of a pea. And then what we're going to do is kind of taper one end. So we're going to make a cone shape. So almost like the technique you were doing to make a log of fondant, you're only going to do on one side of the ball to kind of taper it to create a pointy end. So it looks like a cone, like, oh, I dropped it. Like that. So you do the same with the other. And then what we're going to do is attach those to each side of the top of the bat's body with a small amount of water. So it looks like that. Next, we'll move on to the eyes. Again, I'm just going to make sure my hands are a little clean. And for the eyes, again, we're going to need the bright green, the black, and the white. I still have some black sitting out, so I'm just going to take a little bit of green. We'll need just a small amount. And then some white out. It's almost 5 o'clock, so I'm going to try to get this cat design in as well. So again, for the eyes for the bat, we are going to make 2 small balls of bright green fondant. And we're going to put these on top of the bat's body. These are both the same size. I didn't do different sizes for these ones like I did with the spider, but you can totally do that if you want. So what I'm going to do is just lightly start pressing down on the eyes to create circles, and so that they start to stick to the bat. And I'm just doing this in the middle of the bat's body. Okay, the next layer is going to be the black. So again, we're going to do the same thing, but you want the black balls of fondant to be a little smaller than the green ones. So you can layer those on top and then begin pressing those down to create circles. Okay, so next is the white. I like to make the white the smallest because these are like the pupils. And for these, I'm going to do, I'm going to put them on the upper corner, right corner of each eye. So I'm just going to add a little white speck here. And then a little white speck here. and then lightly press those down as well to create a little circle. So these are the bats. And then next, I'm going to start the cat cookie. So I can answer any questions that you had on the bat while I start the cat cookie, if there are any.
Actually, we're looking pretty good here. No questions as of yet. So we're excited to see what the bat is. The cat, rather.
Yes, the cat. Okay. So for the cat, we will need black fondant again. This is the design of the cat. So I'm going to keep it right here so you can see it. We are going to need the circle cutter that we used in the beginning to cover the cookies with. So first, again, I'm going to need this black fondant. And when I roll out this black fondant, I definitely want it to be on the thinner side because this is a bigger portion of the cookie and we already have the cookie covered. So I want this to be a thin amount of fondant. So I'm going to lightly dust my surface with some cornstarch. And I'm going to begin to roll the fondant out, and we're going to then cut a circle out of it. So I might be rolling mine definitely on the thinner side, probably definitely thinner than 1/8 of an inch, just because I'm going to be layering this. So now I'm going to take the circle cutter that we used earlier. I'm going to cut a circle. So I'm going to press down, give it a nice twist so that the edges are nice and clean. Again, if your cutter isn't too sharp and you don't notice your edges aren't that clean, you can pick it up and start going around the edges with your finger, just pressing in on them, and that can clean up the edges as well. So now what we're going to do is place the circle cutter over this cutout circle and then slightly move it down. So it's about just 1/4 of the way down of the circle. Make sure it's even. And then we're going to press down. This is going to be the head of the cat. Kind of almost creates like a football shape. And then we're going to carefully pick this up. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small amount of water and I'm going to just brush this lower 1/4 of the cookie because this is where I'm going to be putting the black piece. I don't want to maneuver this piece of black fondant too much because it is on the thinner side. And then we're going to put this onto the orange cookie and we want to match it up to the very edge of your orange circle. Okay, so that's the head for the cat. Next, I'm going to roll out a little bit more of black fondant and we're going to cut out a square. The square is about 1 inch wide. I happen to have a small square cutter. If you don't, you could always roll this out into a circle and then use your knife to cut straight edges to create a square. So I cut out my square, and then to create the little triangles for the ears, I'm going to diagonally cut this square. Again, I'm going to take a very small amount of water and I'm just going to brush a light amount on the left and right side above the cat head. And we're going to attach the ears here. And then for the points of the ears, I kind of like to push them a little forward just to give them a little movement. Just like that. Next, I'll get into the hat for the cat. And what we're going to do for that is we need purple fondant. Is it okay that I'm going a little over the 5 o'clock mark?
Yeah, you should be okay.
Okay, I just want to make sure you didn't have another class that you had to get to.
Nope, me personally, I'm good.
Okay. So I'm going to just take a small amount of the purple fondant. We are going to roll the purple fondant out on the thicker side. And we're going to cut out a star. I'm just going to knead this really quick to make sure it gets soft and pliable. Okay. So I'm going to roll the purple into a ball, and then I'm going to use my rolling pin to roll it out, and I'm going to roll it out on the thicker side. Let me see. Okay, so my star cutter will fit. So I'm going to cut a star out. Again, I'm going to press down. I'm going to give it a little shake just to make sure the edges are clean. And I'm going to save the rest of my purple fondant. I'm going to put it in a Ziploc bag. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to cut off one point of the star, but we want to use a little bit of the edges of each on the left and the right so that this will act as the brim of the hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off like half of the left and the right, half of the left and right point on the star. And I'm going to completely cut off the bottom 2 points of the star straight across. And that's going to give us the shape of our witch hat. And this little line here is kind of acting as the brim of the hat. And then what I did was I made it a little bit more pointy, and then I started manipulating it so that the witch hat kind of bent to one side just to give it a little character. And then what I'll do is you just attach it to the top of your cat's head. And then we'll need to make the belt and the belt buckle. So what you'll do is you'll take a really small amount of black fondant, roll it into a ball, and then begin to roll it back and forth to create a log. And then we're going to use that same flattening technique and just kind of flatten this log so that it looks like a long, skinny rectangle. And that's going to act as our belt for the brim of the hat. When you're working with these small pieces, you can use a knife to help pick up your small pieces. And then I'm just layering this over right above the brim of the hat. And then for the buckle, I'm using bright green since that's the theme with our colors. And for that, what I'm going to do is, since this is a very small square and I do not have a cutter that size, I'm going to use my same technique where I make a really small ball of bright green fondant, press it down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my knife and cut straight edges on the circle to create a square. And then I'm just going to cut out a small hole in the center of the square so it looks like a belt buckle. Again, this piece is really small, so I'm sorry if you guys can't see it. That's how little it is. And then I'm going to just attach this to the middle of the belt. Okay, so the next are the eyes. And again, we're using the same layering technique. So again, you'll need 2 bright green balls of fondant. And what I'm going to do is they're both the same size. I'm going to look at where I want to place these. I have my eyes lower on the cat's head and farther apart. It gives it a really cute look. So I'm going to, I have my 2 small balls of green fondant right there, and I'm going to just start lightly pressing down to create a circle. I do need a little bit of water because my fondant's not sticking. You'll do the same on the other side. Start to press down to create a circle. And then we'll start to do our black circles. Again, you're going to do the same technique, roll it into 2 small balls, but these are going to be smaller than the bright green ones. And you're going to layer them on top. And then start pressing them down so they are a circle. And we'll do the same with the white. Again, that's going to be a much smaller ball to start with, since those are more like the pupils on the cat's eyes. And we're just going to put them on the, we're going to put them both on the upper right corners of the cat's eyes. Okay, so I need some white. Definitely make sure your hands are clean before moving to your white fondant. I just put 2 little white specks on the upper right corner of each eye. And then our cat eyes are complete. And then last but not least, I'm going to give the cat a little nose. And for that, I use some orange fondant. And what I did was I just made a really small ball again. And I slightly flattened it. And then I gave it a small point with my finger to create like a triangle shape. And then I put it on upside down. So the flat part of the triangle is on top. Let's see if I can get this on. I'll put that right in the center, lower than the eyes. Okay, mine doesn't want to stick, so I'm going to just take a small amount of water. I'm not even sticking my brush back in the water because the brush is still a little wet. And if it got too wet, it would be too much for this, so. Okay, so all the cookies are done. We have our bat, our cat, and our spiders. Are there any more questions?
Let's see here. Question about the fondant itself. So Vivian asked, how many toppers do you think you could make out of the packets of fondant? So if she was making, say, 30 cookies, would she be better off getting a tub, or how much do you think a packet could go for?
Yes, if you're making 30 cookies, definitely get a tub. The packets are really just good for small details. If you're creating really small shapes for toppers and stuff like that. So if you're doing 30 cookies, I definitely recommend you getting a tub. I think there's 2 pounds and 5 pounds, but a 2-pound tub should be enough for 30 cookies.
Okay, excellent. And then we had some people asking about keeping the fondant fresh after, some time. Do you have any tips on keeping the fondant, soft so it doesn't get too hard or crackly over time?
Right. So if you were using our 4.4 ounce packets, like what I'm doing right now, you're going to put this in a Ziploc bag first for first coat of protectant. And you're going to wrap it really tight to make sure there's no air left in it. And then you're going to zip it shut. And then I recommend also putting this into a Tupperware or some type of airtight container to really make sure it's out of the air. So our tubs of fondant come like this, and then there's no fondant in this one right now, but if I were to open it, there would be a blue bag and the fondant would be in that bag. But this tub keeps it very airtight so that the fondant doesn't dry out. A lot of people, if they put leftover fondant away, some people like to put a really light coating of shortening on the fondant to make sure it kind of traps the fondant from the air getting into the fondant.
That's a very good tip. And once the fondant is on the cookies, and maybe you don't eat all the cookies at once, and they go a few days, would it be a good idea to like brush on some of that shortening you mentioned to keep it fresh on the cookie as well, or no?
No, the fondant will be fine on the cookie. As fondant sits out on cookies or like a topper for a cupcake, it doesn't actually get very hard that it's gonna hurt your teeth or crack your teeth. It kind of has like a consistency of a sprinkle. So it's a little crunchy on the outside, but it's soft. It stays soft on the inside. So you should be fine leaving them out. You can put them in a, obviously, so the cookies don't get stale, you would want to keep them in a bag or an airtight container as well.
Okay, awesome. I think that about covers the question. So I guess we are ready to wrap up here.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I had so much fun, and I look forward to the next Halloween class that's on the schedule. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you.